Okay, I'm going to go through some of our grain that we use here at Deer Creek Brewery. The big stack there is 40 bags of standard 2-row from Roar. This is American malt. It's kind of a base grain, like for instance in our Deerfly IPA. Back in the corner, the little green tags are a pale ale malt. A beer like that is in our Cork County Red Cream Ale as the base grain. And then we have specialty grains. So, for instance, there's a biscuit malt here. We've got Vienna malts. There's some Cara Red, which gives our Cork County Red Cream Ale that red hue. We have some Patagonia malt, which is 55 Levabon crystal malt. So there's flaked grains we use too. There's some flaked oats and some flaked barley, which add some body and some mouthfeel to the different beers. So each bag of grain gets dumped into the red rad mills. This is a grain mill. It's got 2 rollers and a big motor, and it's going to just crack the husk of the grain open just to expose that starch. Because when we get into the mashing portion, we want to break that starch down into a fermentable sugar. So there's the mill. We'll turn it on for a second. The way the cracked grain gets up to the mash tun is through a chain disc. So this pipe here has a chain in it and little segments. It's just going to pull the grain around and then drop it through a chute up in the mash tun. So we'll get the chain disc going. So it's taking it all the way up, and then it would drop the grain where that silver tube is into the mash tun. And we come back empty and pick up some more grain. Alright, so this is our mash tun. So now the cracked grain mixes in with water. We can set whatever temperature we like. If my hot water coming in is 166 degrees, for instance, I'll know I'll be mashing in at about 153. That gives us kind of a medium bodied beer. I can do higher temperatures, lower temperatures for what style of beer we're brewing. After a 90-minute mash, we'll do something called sparging. We'll bring hot water through a sparge ring. So now we're kind of rinsing the sugar away from the grain. So the grain kind of acts as like a big coffee filter, and we're rinsing the sugar through, which is now called wort, W-O-R-T, wort. We'll go into this little R2-D2 looking tank. It's called a Grant tank, and it just helps be kind of a middleman between the mash tun and the kettle. Because now we're going to start pumping the wort over into the brew kettle over here. So we just continue to sparge. It's about a 75-minute process. The little grain tank helps us maintain our level of water in the grain bed. So we're not just pumping directly out of there. We're going into kind of the middleman there to keep the grain bed so we don't get a stuck mash. Okay, so this is a 20-barrel system. We're making 20 barrels of beer each brew. 1 barrel is 31 gallons or 2 kegs. So for instance, we can make 40 kegs at a time with this system. And it's nice, it has what's called a diverter panel. So you use a jumper like this. So when I'm pumping out, when I'm doing that sparging, taking that wort from that Grant tank over to the kettle, we'll be on like this. And we'll go from the pump out to the kettle fill line. Later on, if I want to clean the system, there's a couple spray balls in there, and we'll put our cleaning solution in the Grant tank, and we'll go pump out to the CIP, clean in place. That's the 2 spray balls, and it's a nice way to be able to clean just this side while I'm still brewing with the kettle side over here. So on the kettle side, it has its own pump also. We'll use the jumper to go through the whirlpool inlet. And this kind of whirlpools helps us come to a boil. So we'll whirlpool during the whole 90-minute boil. When we're done, we'll let it rest. We'll turn the steam off. And after 45 minutes, we'll transfer through the heat exchanger. And that'll bring us from like 198 degrees down to room temp. So we'll go from pump out to HX to the heat exchanger. We'll bring cold water and cold glycol in on one side of a plate in the heat exchanger, and now this hot wort out of the kettle on the other side, the heat transfers over. We're able to recollect that water into the back of the hot liquor tank. So it takes about 45 minutes actually to transfer this over into the fermenter. So there'll be brewery hose from the heat exchanger then to the fermenter. So here at Deer Creek Brewery we have about 4,000 barrel capacity. That's determined by our fermentation capacity and then how many days it takes to do an ale or a lager over the course of a year. For instance, we have 3 20-barrel tanks. We have 2 brand new 40-barrel tanks. And then the ones on the very end are brite tanks. So those are ones we're going to keg and can and bottle out of. The fermenters are conical shaped because we're able to collect the yeast out of those and reuse the yeast. So 3 20-barrel tanks, 2 40-barrel fermenters, a 40-barrel brite tank to bottle, keg, and can out of, and then a 20-barrel brite tank. All right, so after the fermentation process, a beer like our Deerfly IPA gets dry hopped at about day 4 or 5. We collect yeast. We go about another 5 or 6 days, and then we'll go up to 75 degrees and then crash it down to 35. So we'll get it really cold, and then we'll transfer it into a brite tank. So this is a 40-barrel brand new brite tank. So it has the Deerfly IPA in it. You can see it's really cold. It's about 37 degrees. So the door's kind of got a lot of condensation on it. We're getting ready to fill some kegs. So we've got 3 kegs here, and we'll fill right out of this tube on the bottom here right into the kegs.